followers of Dan Ives, who's a friend of this network, have a new tool, investment in all of the top tech names. We want to talk more about the Dan Ives Wedbush AI Revolution ETF. Cullen Rogers is with us, CIO of Wedbush. I'm so glad you're here to talk about Ives. Tell us more about this.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Nicole. The entire idea behind this was to take Dan Ives, of course, as everybody knows, one of the great bearers of truth in the tech space, in the analytical realm, and turn all of his research into an investable product. So he did that through using his AI 30 report, which identifies his top 30 names, his highest conviction names. We take those, put them into a passive index wrapper, and manage it. So the idea is really to combine active stock selection through Dan with a passive index, try to get the best of both worlds.
What kind of names are in here in the top 30?
So you've got your traditional Mag 7s. Again, Dan's been one of the guys pounding the table on these names, from Palantir to NVIDIA, for a long time. And so you've got the usual suspects, which I think in an AI portfolio you'd be remiss not to have. But I think where Dan brings his highest value add is trying to find those next Palantirs, the next NVIDIAs. And so you've got a lot of smaller names like SoundHound and CyberArk, which was just acquired by Palo Alto, Oklo, the nuclear play. So there's a whole spectrum, and really the idea that Dan has behind his research and report is to break out the AI ecosystem into segments, and then as the AI ecosystem changes, this portfolio will move with it, which I think is a great differentiator when you look at the other passive indices in the AI ecosystem.
Where do we think we are in the AI revolution right now? I mean, does Dan say it's only the beginning?
Dan says it's a party that lasts till 4 a.m. and it's only 10 p.m. So I agree. I think we're still early, but it's going to be a wild ride. I don't think anyone knows. I don't at least know where AI is going to shift and move, whether it's into quantum computing versus traditional compute or where it may go. But luckily, I've got a buddy who does, named Dan Ives, and so he's kind of the guiding light behind all of this. But I think we're still in the early stages. We're just now starting to see earnings cycles where the fruits of all that CapEx are coming to fruition in profits, and I think we'll continue to see that play out over the next several years.
Now, what was Dan Ives? I mean, this one launched here June 3rd, 2025. I remember Ives ETF that has been around for a long time. Similar or different to the original Ives ETF?
The original Ives ETF was cloud computing. So similar vein, but different target. So I think we started thinking about this late last year in what the best way to bottle up Dan's general revolutionary thesis is, and this was a result.
So I see. So you took the Ives ETF, because a lot of folks remember the Ives ETF. I mean, if you've been on Wall Street, you know that it already existed. But you revamped this and relaunched this with a new purpose and more about the AI revolution, right? I see cybersecurity, software, hyperscalers, autonomous, robotics. So it's not just AI as we know it. It sort of trickles out, right?
Exactly. I think that's sort of how Dan looks at AI, is this derivative underlying ecosystem in AI, the second, third derivatives. And I think that's what he's so good at, is not only looking at these top of list names like the NVIDIAs, but, working its way down. You've got more data centers being built than exist. They need power. So you've got Oklo and all these derivative plays. So the goal is really to catch the entire AI landscape from top to bottom, even the ones that aren't top of mind.
How about a name like Taiwan Semi or Oracle or Broadcom? Tell me about some of those names and the potential that Dan thinks these really have.
I think he views a lot of these companies, again, we're in a revolution, right? And so when you look at TSMC, they're leading the pack in chip production. NVIDIA, of course, is the top dog. And so I think similar to what the last guest, Rebecca, said, I think there is this new order that will be developed out of these companies that are going to have, I think, a lot of, maybe not power, but a lot of, consumer and enterprise buy-in that are going to be very powerful moving forward. So I think he sees these continuing to play out and get bigger and bigger and continue to kind of own their spaces.
Mostly U.S. companies, right? Why is that?
Correct. Mostly U.S. US listed more specifically. But yes, I think right now Dan is seeing the US as leading the pack in AI, and you can see that through investment dollars coming in. But the goal of the portfolio isn't necessarily to be strictly US. I think we're about 84% US right now, and that could change. I think that's one of the beauties of the way that we've structured this product, is that if it does indeed change and another country comes out as a major leader, Dan can shift names into those areas geographically and capture whatever is the tip of the spear that's moving AI.
There was a brief time when at first Liberation Day, tech really came out of favor. There were a lot of worries. Are we not worried about that anymore, really? I mean, is tech sort of the long-term place to be, that you should have exposure to all these names?
Yeah, I think when you think about this through the traditional thematic lens, it seems like a cyclical area. But when you really zoom out and you start to listen to what Dan and everybody else is saying about AI, it's a much more secular move. And so I wouldn't call all of this noise, but I think there is a look through that you have to do with these sort of trends, whether it was April with the tariff Liberation Day, or it's right now with this little pullback. I think all of these present buying opportunities. If you look at these companies and say, are they going to be priced higher in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? I think the answer is resoundingly yes. And so I think as we see this play out and ripple through our everyday lives and enterprise lives and corporate lives, AI is going to be a bigger and bigger factor in those. And I think it's exposure you need to have.
I also think that it was monumental. They said that there were new names in the AI Revolution 30 list for this ETF, 4 new companies, removing 3. Everybody always wants to know what's going in and what's going out, because they don't want what's going out. And I see the list here, and so it said announce the inclusion of cybersecurity, CrowdStrike, gaming platform Roblox, energy giant GE Vernova, and cloud provider Nebius. To make room for those new additions, software maker Adobe and CyberArk and Elastic and V have been removed. Can you comment on the names that went in and the names that have been removed? I mean, how much upside do the names going in really have now?
Well, as far as the specifics on the rationale, I'll leave that to Dan, and he's opined on it a little bit in the past. But the general thought there, and I think this speaks to the structure of the ETF, is that as Dan sees the landscape changing, and Adobe, for instance, that hasn't quite had the AI saturation and exposure that was expected, he rotates out of those names and puts in new ones, whether they're in a totally new segment of AI or in the same vein, but maybe has a better upside potential. And so I think that's exactly what you saw here, and that's indicative of how this will all work moving forward, is that as Dan sees opportunities shifting or upside removed from certain names and greater in others, he rotates out of those names and into new ones.
Yeah, I think this is the big news here. I mean, this is what we probably should have led this interview with, because this is what people are going to write down. I mean, they know already that Dan Ives loves the Mag 7. That's definitely going to be in there. But to have the inclusion of CrowdStrike, Roblox, GE Vernova, and Nebius, I think that's very valuable for people to know. Cullen Rogers, CIO at Wedbush, thank you so much. It's great to speak with you, Cullen. Thank you.